Welcome back, everyone, to the Suit Yourself podcast, part of the Finish First Media Network. My name is Austin. I am joined today with fellow co-host, because there is no host to this show,
Brandon,
who is once again, as stated every episode, struggling to put the iPad away. It's a signature move at this point.
It's tough mixing up the beats on the fly. And I'm almost positive I had that one muted. But we will see in post.
I believe it was muted as well. I did not see wavelengths coming over the thing, and I didn't want to stop it. Fair enough. Speaking of tough, what is your favorite recipe to cook?
That's a very good question.
I did ask it. That is why.
Yeah, this was not pre-scripted. I do have this fantastic shrimp scampi recipe, which I know it's not too difficult to make, but the way the shallots really marinate in there with all of the other ingredients, it really just gives it a great taste with the noodles and the shrimp. Do you know what a shallot is?
Incredible. I believe it is some form of onion.
Close enough, yeah.
I watch Gordon Ramsay here and there. He's always yelling about him.
They're very underrated.
So, just a little bit of an intro for today of what we're going to be going over. We are going to start with our wide receiver rankings of 20 through 40. On our next episode, this upcoming Friday, we will be going over our 1 through 19 at that point. We will also be going over our favorite players as well, to steal from other podcasts, the flag plant. But today we're just going to go 20 through 40, answer some mailbag questions, and we are also going to do our favorite upside players who may or may not be, within the top 40. Let's just jump right into it. Brandon, would you like to jump us off into your number 40 running back? We'll go 40 through 35 or 36, probably 40 through 36, and we'll try to move pretty quick through these since they're a little bit kind of out there.
My number 40 would be Emmanuel Sanders. In previous years, he hasn't been much of a touchdown threat the past couple of years, and he is getting up there in age, and he's the number 2 option. That being said, or I guess depending on how much work Kamara gets, he might be the number 3 option. But that being said, he's a good fit on the Saints, and he's good for a decent amount of catches and decent yards. He's nobody who's going to wow you by any means, but he's definitely somebody you could plug in the flex on bye weeks. Number 39.
Can I interject very quickly?
I would love you to.
Just to say that these are, in fact, our PPR rankings.
Correct.
You can find both our PPR and standard rankings on our website.
finishfirstmedia.com.
And that's going to be over in the rankings section for our podcast. And Brandon, go ahead and continue with your ranks. Sorry to jump in like that.
Fantastic plug. Leave a like while you're at it too.
Didn't mean to. On what?
Unless you're on our website, then don't
leave a like on the
because
website.
We don't have a like option. Number 39, we have Golden Tate. If we were to, without his 6-game suspension for the performance-enhancing drugs or the male enhancement drugs, he would have been on track for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last season. If you were to go on a per-game basis times 16. He does have some age concerns. However, in that system last year, Matthew Stafford was looking good and throwing the ball, of course. And
he is a very handsome man.
Yeah, arguably.
I mean, that's kind of joking. I'd say he's about middle.
Yeah, he looks kind of like a goob, but yeah. Let's see. Number 38, we have Henry Ruggs III.
Oh,
he should be the number 1 wide receiver on the Raiders. There are some concerns because with the whole 5-yard passes and the no distance on Derek Carr. However, there is a fun fact I have for you. We have plenty of them.
I'm very excited.
This is one of the fun facts.
I love fun facts.
Derek Carr's career passer rating, targeting receivers in between 10 and 19 yards, is 90.3. Last season in college, Ruggs's receiving grade for 10 to 19 yards was 91.8. So this seems almost like a match made in heaven.
Oof.
And really, there isn't much competition for the wide receiver on that team. It's a bunch of rookies and a couple of guys coming back who were kind of lackluster.
You don't think so?
No. The main guy was Darren Waller. I think he'll be impacted by this the most. But I think Ruggs has potential to be very good this year. Number 37 is another guy I think has a lot of potential, and that is Deontay Johnson. It's easy to forget this, but it's not last season, but the season prior, when Ben was healthy for the last time, he threw for 5,000 yards. Those have to go somewhere. And Juju's not going to catch anything more than 1,500. So there's a huge target share for him. There isn't much competition for the number 2 wide receiver. I know.
You don't think James Washington is a potential issue?
Not really. Not at this point, no.
I mean, James Washington had 80 targets and 735 yards last season.
That still isn't very good.
That's pretty significant, though, considering how bad the passing offense was. He led the team.
I mean, even last, if you look at guys like Randall Cobb put those numbers up. And Randall Cobb isn't viewed as any good.
I understand, but also, he's not Duck Hodges. Duck Hodges isn't throwing the ball either.
Fair enough.
Just something, I don't know.
Number 36 is one of the players I think is one of the most overrated in fantasy, and that is Marquise Hollywood Brown.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I am not big on Marquise Brown this season. He's been wildly inconsistent. He oftentimes looks fantastic, but just as often he looks terrible. Or maybe not terrible, but lackluster.
That has anything to do with the Ravens running the ball so much?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're not necessarily saying he's bad. It's just the situation isn't overly ideal?
I mean, his numbers are inflated, which I'll get to in a second. But for where he's being drafted with the situation, I don't think he's worth having. He was 54th in receptions, 56th in yards, but he's 13th in touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So, he had way overinflated numbers in touchdowns last year. So if those were to come back to the mean, he would still, and let's say his yards did go up and his catches did go up, he'd still probably revert to around the same place he was. I mean, yeah, I'm not big on him. I'm not big on any of the receivers on that team other than Mark Andrews, and he's not even a receiver. But and for some reason, I'm not sure why, but I feel like the Ravens are going to struggle a little more this year, especially after I saw what the Titans did to him last season in the playoffs. It seemed like as time went on, people were starting to kind of figure them out a little bit.
Yeah, it's always tough to tell because that usually happens a lot with playoffs, because only one team can obviously win the Super Bowl, so.
So yeah, because the last time, it could also be recency bias, which I know was a few months ago, but the last time I watched the Ravens, they got dominated. That's just it.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be hard for Lamar Jackson to kind of continue at a very high level the kind of game that he has.
Yeah, he was I think 18th in passing yards and first
teams
in passing
are
touchdowns.
Eventually gonna,
That's not going to happen.
Teams are going to force you to play to your weakness, and I'm not saying he can't throw, but clearly throwing is not his his strength.
In the postseason, he threw for 40 plus times in both of his playoff games. He ended in a loss both times.
Well, yeah, and it's just going to be tough when you're playing against better defenses who are going to make you play to your not that every team isn't making you try to play to your weakness, but more so it's amplified and teams have a better game plan come playoff time.
I agree. Again, that was number 36.
Okay, perfect. Let me get over to mine. I'm running a million tabs over here. So, all right. So for my number 40, I'm actually going to start us out with Sterling Shepard. The Giants are really hard to figure out. At least I think they are. I'm not sold on Daniel Jones, or else I probably would have Sterling Shepard maybe a little bit higher. But I think he's a good fit there, especially with Golden Tate coming back and just kind of the new offensive weapons and Saquon. And I think he has a lot of value there. But he's not, to me, like a big play guy. He's going to be more of those guys that gets you 8 to 10 points a week. He's never going to.
He's fine.
Yeah, he's never going to give you, in my opinion, the 25, 20 point, and obviously he's not ranked a top 10 player, but he's a safe, low upside player, and that's kind of how I rank him. And I think if you're just looking for somebody safe in your, second or third flex spot, he might, be somebody who can kind of hold you down there. Number 39, I actually have Alshon Jeffrey, and I know that's kind of And the biggest thing for me with Alshon is that his health does not look good for a little while now, and I am a little worried about the health. It was good to see Carson Wentz play a full season last year, but I just am a little worried about Alshon's health. And obviously how I have these ranked out is that, I'm projecting him to play a real season here. But I think he's going to be a nice play when he does play, and I'm not too worried about a bunch of other people getting in the way of him. As far as receiving goes, I think it's kind of his receiving backfield receiving core to lose almost. Number 38, I have Golden Tate as well. So it looks like the Giants are just making all my mid-30s lists. How I saw this backfield playing out was more of a hodgepodge of everybody kind of has the same stat line versus there being a big leader there. And so I think that they're all going to play, again, kind of like the whole Sterling Shepard thing. I think they're going to, Golden Tate in my eyes has a little bit more upside in terms of a weekly, what he can do or what he can produce as ceiling wise. But I think that they're all going to finish around the same kind of yardage and pretty similar touchdowns. And that's how I see the Giants' passing offense working out. With I know Slayton's in there, and he's probably going to get.
Yeah.
I think I had him projected around the same spot ish as these guys. So that's I have him at 46. So I just kind of have the entire Giants receiving core within 10 spots of each other because I think it's going to be pretty. Just take one and you're going to get the same guy almost.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Golden Tate, though, does have the most upside of anybody.
Probably, yeah.
At least for this season. I'm not talking Dynasty or anything. My number 37 is going to be Tyler Boyd. I think he is one of those guys that also has a lot better chance of potentially rising in value. A.J. Green has not proven that he can stay healthy at all. I mean, he's essentially ended he didn't play last season, and I want to say he got, you can correct me if I'm wrong, something like 6 games the year before. He's just not been a very healthy individual and not somebody that you envision as playing the whole season as much as you like him to. So I think Tyler Boyd is actually a very nice pickup here, and I think he can produce a lot more value than, or a lot more than the 38 spot should something happen to A.J. Green, which if I was betting on it, I bet something is going to happen to A.J. Green. And then number 36, to wrap mine up, I have Deontay Johnson here. I just think that the offense is going to be resurgent. I think that he is going to kind of, I don't want to say break out because he did a little bit last year, but he's going to kind of break out as the number 2 receiver in that in the wide receiving area there. And I think he even has a chance to kind of take over Juju a little bit. I wasn't very impressed by Juju last year. I'm sure anybody who owned him probably wasn't, myself included.
Nobody was.
But I think that Deontay Johnson has a real chance here to kind of make a name for himself with Roethlisberger back, even though Roethlisberger, there's been a lot of rumors that he's not throwing downfield very well. But I still think that he's going to get a lot of volume and he can potentially, he's another one of those guys that I would say he might finish a lot better than the number 36. Brandon, actually, do we have is it question time?
Ooh, I think it's...
Oh, it is question time. All right.
For the people.
So, Brandon, I will ask you, who is someone you are very high on that no one else seems to be high on?
That's a great question. Let me see here.
And then vice versa, who is someone you're really low on that people are hyping up?
Let me pull up my list. I have this written down.
Oh.
Actually, the person I'm very low on is actually going to be on my next one, and people might be very upset about it. But that's okay. Somebody I'm very high on this season, especially for his ADP, is Cooper Kupp. But that's something for next episode, and I have a whole essay here as to why he should be picked up. So we can come back to that.
Where do you have him? Where is he in the ADP?
ADP, let me pull it up. I believe it was somewhere around for like wide receiver 15 or something like that.
Okay.
I think he's a lot better than that.
Yeah, I can just tell you by looking at my ranks that he was probably going to be my answer for this segment as well.
Was he really?
I have him ranked in my top 5 as a spoiler. Ooh. So obviously if he's...
You too?
Yeah, he's going to be the exact same one for me just looking at what I have here.
I like that.
I'll go ahead while you're looking up that.
How about your disappointment or somebody you're not excited about?
Actually, so this one might be a little. People probably won't like this one, but I actually have Will Fuller as being somebody I really don't like. I know there's been kind of a lot of buzz about him. He actually is. I have him ranked, and I know that I'm not some kind of scientist over here, but I actually have him ranked as my 66th wide receiver.
Ooh.
Which that's going to be a very unpopular take.
I wouldn't say it's a scalding hot take, but it's lukewarm at least.
I would also, kind of in the same A.J. Green camp, I would also bet money that he will not be playing a full season.
Ooh.
I know.
Well, I have some news for you. I have some news for you coming up.
I mean, Will Fuller plays like 8 games a season, so.
And not only that,
on a good
season.
Actually,
he's actually part of our next mailbag.
Oh.
Which I don't know if you've seen the mailbag because I've kept it relatively secret.
Yeah, you have kept it secret from me. I did not know he was in the mailbag. So.
Yeah, I know.
I will stop.
I try to keep him down low.
I will stop talking about him. Who's the player that you are kind of low on right now, or comparatively to everyone else?
So you know how I said that your last one was lukewarm hot? Mm-hmm. I believe the audience will believe this one's a scalding hot one, and I believe most people will, and that is DJ Chark at number 35, which
Wait, his ADP is 35?
I have him at 35.
Oh, I was like,
I have him at
geez.
35.
I'm over. I have
His
way up there.
ADP is like around Cooper Kupp's, and I have zero faith in DJ Chark this year.
He is within my top 15.
Is he?
Just for what it's
reference,
worth.
Will he make the jump in season 3? I don't think so.
The jump.
Yeah.
Couldn't you
last
argue
season
that he made the jump last
Last
season?
season you could argue he made the jump, but like the jump, because like last season he had what, like exactly 1,000 yards and like 8 touchdowns.
On 118 targets though.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that's not superstardom.
Well, no, but
that's not even elite level.
1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns is solid.
He's being drafted at elite level, and I don't think he's elite.
I mean, he's got Gardner Minshew throwing in the ball. Yeah,
he still does.
2 or 3 quarterbacks last year.
Here's what I have here. In the first 5 games alone, he had 5 touchdowns. And that's really nice. After that, he had 3 touchdowns in the last 11 games. And right here I have the note, very, very hot start, completely fizzled out. And in those same first 5 games, he had nearly 500 yards, 485. And if you were to multiply that on a pace for a full season, that would be 1,550 yards and 16 touchdowns. That is fantastic. But if you take the pace he spent 2/3 of the season on, the 11 games, that would be 760 yards and 4 touchdowns. So without and he had a couple games. I think his week 1 game, he had 4 catches for 140 yards and a touchdown. So it's well, that is a fluke game.
Well, can I play devil's advocate and say, why would you assume that he's going to continue the bad numbers and not the good numbers?
Well, first off, his rookie season was okay. Then we have this one. This is his main sample size. 2/3 of his best year were bad.
But couldn't you make the argument that since he's still a developing player and he's shown the ability to be very good, that he's going to take steps forward, and maybe next year might be the opposite in terms of, it might go from being, I can't remember if you've said 5 or 6 good games, but 5 good games. And maybe next year, could it switch? He might have 5 bad games and 11 good games kind of thing.
Well, even with that, it would probably get him to 1,208, which is really good, don't get me wrong. But if that's his max ceiling...
He had 8, though, with the
and I don't see that happening.
With the bad games.
Well, yeah.
So if you switched him, he'd have a lot more than 8.
It's just he's a lot of risk, and his stats fell off a cliff once Minshew became quarterback, too. So
okay.
It's just they seem to like to run the ball a lot, and he's their best guy, sure, but there's a lot of questions about Gardner Minshew as well, and it's just, for where he's being drafted, I just don't see it. Maybe I was a little disrespectful and put him a little low.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I don't mind the criticism of him, but I don't think he's anywhere. I mean, to me, saying 20 would be kind of ridiculously low on him,
Yeah, I don't know. I just not excited about him at all.
Right, that's fair enough.
Unfortunately for him. But let's see. My next one.
You have multiples.
Well, yeah, he was just my number 36.
All right.
And he's the guy I wasn't excited about, so it worked out perfectly. I did not intend that. But number 35, we have Sterling Shepard. As you were speaking earlier, I said he was fine, and my notes say definition of fine. Not speaking about looks. But I don't know what he looks like. But if healthy, he's probably good for 900 yards to 1,000 and 7 touchdowns. A guy who you're fine with playing during bye weeks or at the flex. Maybe even a wide receiver too, depending on how he's doing. The next guy, this one I can see him moving up. That's CeeDee Lamb, because he's replacing Randall.
And what is he?
He's number 34.
No. I'm saying you think he's going to outperform?
I think he's move up. I think he's better than this.
I was just
Or he has potential to be better.
I was just making sure, but we were arguing there. Okay.
Yeah. So he's replacing Randall Cobb, which isn't difficult, and Randall Cobb even ended the season with 850 yards and 3 touchdowns. I think he's going to be significantly better than Cobb. So even if, let's say, he plays at the same level, that's still really good for a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I can't see a world where he's worse than Randall Cobb. And with that, if 850 and 3 is the floor, I think that's pretty good.
I think there is a little rebuttal, though, and I would say that if you look at the Cowboys' offense, I believe they had the most yards in the NFL.
Yeah.
And they also had 2 guys over 1,000 receiving yards.
That is true.
So couldn't you argue that Randall Cobb's numbers were a little overinflated? Because
They very well could have been.
Your third receiver is going to go down, you'd think, before the first two.
But he could even has potential to surpass Michael Gallup, just because Michael Gallup.
Oh.
Well, Michael Gallup, by an efficiency standpoint, he was very bad last year. He led the league in drops, and there are plenty of stats that showed that he just scored a lot because he got the ball a lot.
That's a little bit of a hot take.
Number 33, DK Metcalf.
So how many of these do you have?
I start at 36 and go down to 31.
Oh, okay.
I went really long on DJ Chark.
I'm sorry.
But DJ Metcalf is number 33. He very athletic, performed way better than I thought he would last year. I guess he could make the leap, but with that offense, it's hard to trust two receivers, especially with Russell Wilson. For whatever, when was the last time they had two elite receivers? I can't remember it. Number 32, it's the guy who kind of never goes away, and that's Marvin Jones. He seems a lot older than he is, but he's not, surprisingly. And yeah, he's only had one great season in his career as well.
He's a classic always hurt guy.
Yeah, but he's always hurt.
On a per game basis, he's always really
consistently
good,
a touchdown scorer, good enough to play or draft for bye weeks and flex.
I think he's a good DFS option.
Unfortunately, too, he only played 22 of the possible 32 games in the past two seasons. And he's always good, but never great. But last year, even on a per 16 game basis, which you're not drafting him for the per 16, but if he did, he was on track for nearly 1,000 yards and 11 touchdowns. So still somebody you should keep an eye on. And you're not going to like number 31, and that's AJ Green.
I have him ranked in the next portion here too. So
all the reports are saying he's looking of the AJ of old. The offense should look a little better. When healthy, he's the poster boy of consistency. Unfortunately, he hasn't been very healthy lately.
That poster hasn't been.
However, I read reports that this offseason he trained in injury prevention. Whatever that means.
So he had not done this in the 10 years prior that he was hurt.
I gave a quick. I dove into it and take a quick look, and apparently he was doing exercises and drills to increase ankle strength and durability.
Yeah, I mean that's a real thing.
Yeah, it was strange to hear that.
A lot of people have weaker ankles.
Yeah, it was a strange thing to hear about, and a big part of his training was injury.
For the folks at home, the older you get, the easier it is not to get injured. So I think it's going to work very well for him.
The easier it is not to get injured.
And it was supposed to be a joke.
Oh.
They're talking he's healthy now. Yeah, he's older now. I don't buy it. That's what they're saying.
I don't know.
That's what everybody who's coming off something says.
He's one of those guys. He could be one of the steals, though. I think he's being drafted around the 7th or 8th round. I mean, you could use an 8th round pick and potentially get a decent RB2. Mm-hmm. He's high risk, high reward, I think. And Burrow could be a lot better than we expect to. He could be worse too. So there's a lot of risk involved with him. But yeah, he was number 31 for me.
All right, so I will get it going with the number. Oh boy, I always get confused.
36.
36.
Yeah.
I think I went over my 36 last time.
Who was it?
I said Deontay Johnson, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. You went too far.
No, well, I can't count when it goes like this. My number 35 is actually AJ Green. So I'll go quick on this one just so we don't have to hear the same thing 100 times. I share a lot of the concerns that you do. Again, he's ranked where he is because I'm trying to be fair to him and project a full season. If we're being honest, if I was drafting today, I don't know if I would draft him in this spot in a redraft league. As somebody who owned him in a dynasty league last year, going into the season, he was finally healthy, and then what do you know? He's not healthy before the season starts because he tweaked it. I want to say at the beginning it was, he tweaked his hamstring. And it went from that to he's just shut down for the year. And it's like,
yeah, it's not good.
Okay. And I know a lot of it's because they were tanking, and there's why put him back out there because he's always hurt. And I get it. But to me, he's just such a stay away. And I just have that taste when that name is mentioned. Like I said, like Brandon mentioned, I think he's going to be, just because of how I view him, he's a week-to-week potential winner, but I think you're only going to have him half the year. So it kind of depends. If you're in a situation where, I drafted really good running backs and I have nothing at wide receiver and he's still there, that might be worth taking a chance on. But I wouldn't want him to be my number one, my number two. If he was my flex, I'd probably be happy about it. How about that? Even though on a weekly level, he probably can get you week one, or wide receiver one production. I'm just worried between that and a rookie quarterback and that team being awful last year that it's just, their offensive line was terrible. I'm just worried that things aren't going to, necessarily go the right way. But
Yeah,
if
high risk, high reward.
if I knew he was 100% healthy going next year, I'd probably have him ranked even higher. So my number 34 is actually going to be James Washington. And so I guess I'm going to have to retrace a little bit what I said earlier. I thought I had him ranked behind Deontay Johnson. I have them within 3 points of each other, so it's a little one. I think Deontay Johnson's a better player. James Washington has a little bit more experience and a little bit more rapport with Ben Roethlisberger. I think this is going to be the year that Deontay kind of surpasses him, but I just think James Washington is actually going to edge him out just a little bit. And like I said, I expect the pass game to be a lot better and to rebound from what it was last year, and so I'm expecting a pretty good season out of the Steelers just in general. Moving on, kind of like Brandon, my number 33 is going to be Marvin Jones Jr. I think he's going to put together a very nice season, assuming health. He's kind of in the A.J. Green camp. If he's healthy, he's going to win you some weeks, and then otherwise he's going to sit on your bench questionable every week and never play. So, again, if you're not risk averse and you need some big upside, I would go with him. If you're just looking for somebody to get you consistent points and play most of the time, I would stay away from him. Number 32, I have Michael Gallup. I think he's going to be the clear-cut 2. I don't want to admit it because I don't think he's better than Amari Cooper, but sometimes Amari Cooper kind of just takes plays and games off. I think he has the chance to be better than Amari Cooper. Like I said, I don't think he's a better player, but I think he has the chance to, and given how much the Cowboys throw and how dynamic that offense is, I think there's a pretty good chance that even if he doesn't surpass him, that he is going to still go over 1,000 and get his touchdowns. So I think I'm not sure. I'm going to have to check ADP if I'm high or not on him, but I think he's a very good value at the number 2 spot. Number 31, also going to be a guy that we're a little bit unsure about, and that's Stephon Diggs. John Brown, if he can get over 1,000 yards, I don't know why Stephon Diggs can't, but I feel like Stephon Diggs also shares a lot of the same qualities that John Brown has. So I'm not really sure how that backfill or that receiving core is going to work out. I do think he's obviously a better player, so I think he's going to be the number 1. And again, I think there's good reason to think that he could be over 1,000 yards with high amounts of touchdowns, given how much Josh Allen likes to throw deep, and that's kind of his forte there, Josh Allen. So I think he's another great player with high upside, and that's going to be my 31. Sorry, go ahead.
Excellent. Let's see, number 29.
Now, were we going to discuss?
Oh,
I think you're skipping segments here.
Oh, we have another question for the people.
Yeah, as mentioned a little bit earlier, we have the question. Let me get to it here.
It wasn't much of a question. It was more of a statement, and I wanted to know what you thought about the statement.
So Brandon's question is essentially, is Will Fuller going to ball out?
Yeah, Deshaun Watson.
Will he be one of the best in the league?
Says Will Fuller will ball out and will be one of the best in the league.
Yeah. Wishful thinking.
Are we calling Deshaun a liar?
He's got to say that no matter what. So what's he gonna say? He's gonna be awful and get hurt week 3 again?
Let's say hypothetically this question wasn't provoked. Let's say someone was just talking. He brought up in conversation. Oh, by the way,
if Will Fuller again, I think that Brandon Cooks and Will Fuller are essentially kind of the same guy. So I was a little confused initially, even like why they did this. And again, if you want, Brandon Cooks actually plays games. So if you just wanted to say we wanted one Will Fuller to play all season, then I guess that's fair enough. He's very good, but he's never healthy, and nobody will ever convince me he's going to be healthy. So
I guess you kind of answered the question in the earlier segment, where who do we find overrated?
I
think you mentioned him.
Again, if you knew he's going to play 16, I put him up there. He's not. He's just not going to. Like, I just don't care. He's not going to play 16. So that's where I am, and I think Brandon Cooks is better than him. So that's where I stand. Do you have any closing thoughts, or is that are you in any kind of agreement?
As an owner of him in Dynasty, I want nothing but success for Will Fuller.
As one does.
However, that being said, I have little to no faith in Will Fuller. If we just look at the stats alone, he has never surpassed 1,000 yards, which I know that isn't the barometer of skill, but he's never even eclipsed 50 catches.
Again, it's probably because he's probably never eclipsed 11 games played.
Exactly,
or
but
something.
He's never eclipsed 10 touchdowns. I guess looking at it now, he hasn't even eclipsed 8. So it's his best season was literally from a fantasy perspective, 49 catches, 600 yards, or round up to 700. and 3 touchdowns.
He's essentially
He's been in the league for 4 years.
Mr. DFS, Mr. Best Ball.
And even if we look at last season, he only played 11 games. But if we were to multiply that to 16, he still wouldn't have made 1,000 yards, and he still wouldn't have hit 5 touchdowns.
I mean, in fairness to him, he did have DeAndre Hopkins on that team as well.
No, I agree. But to sit here and pretend like he's all of a sudden going to not get hurt with more work is kind of silly. And
no, I agree.
Yeah, I don't see it. I hope, I want him to, but I don't see it. He's not on my list for top 40 today.
He's one of those guys you just have to hope has a really good first couple weeks and you trade him.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's always the good Will Fuller move because he always balls out at the beginning. So,
well said.
That being said, let us move into our. I believe we are at our 30 to 26.
29 to 25.
Dang it. Well, I went to 30 last time, or 31 last time, so I got some
bonus.
making up to do. Yeah.
Let's see here. Number 29. Speaking of Brandon Cooks, I have Brandon Cooks there. Prior to last season, he had 4 consecutive 1,100 yards seasons.
It is impressive how he does that over so many teams.
Yeah, exactly. He's a decent enough red zone threat as well. He's just constantly hurt and constantly with these concussions, and there's a lot of uncertainty.
Is he hurt? I feel like he plays at least 15 every year.
I gotta look it up. But yeah, it would seem that he always has some sort of problem. However, there's a lot of uncertainties swirling the Texans too. Like there's a lot of new people,
Like
a lot of people
gone.
Yeah, it's difficult to.
For what it's worth, while you're looking that up, I had him as my 30.
Okay.
So I should have mentioned him in the last segment we did.
I guess he only.
Receivers.
Oh, he got hurt really bad in the Super Bowl. I remember. But it looks like he went 7. He only started 12, 15, 16, 14. So I guess he's healthier than I thought.
The last couple of years, he's been relatively healthy, and it's...
Sadly, most of them are head injuries, which you try to avoid. You should. But, yeah, I guess maybe he has potential to be a sleeper, at least for me. But speaking of...
Did you happen to look up his ADP?
ADP. I had it, and I can't... Let me see. ADP.
I feel like at 30, like that sounds really... And maybe it's just because I like all the top receivers this year. But 30 seems pretty out there for a guy I still think is going to probably put together 900 to 1,100 yards.
Yeah, he's one of those guys who could move up. Let me look at the wide receiver real quick.
Kind of like we talked a little bit with the running backs. I think there are a lot of good, like the top 30 is pretty solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone keeps saying, oh, we have draft running backs early. It's super deep for receiver. It's like, no.
I'm going to get shot for my number 23 ranking. But
it's the other way. But let's see. Because I have control find.
If you don't find it, that's all right. I can.
He's being picked at pick 78.
Do you know what wide receiver that is? Does it say like wide receiver 30 or something?
I'm not seeing it. However, here's the company that's around him. Julian Edelman is 2 in front of him. Will Fuller is 1 in front of him, which is an absolute shock to me. Then it's him. Behind him is Michael Gallup, and behind him is Jarvis Landry.
Wait, Jarvis Landry is behind Brandon Cooks?
He is.
Well, my rankings are not going to hit very well.
Jarvis Landry is number 84. I think he's underrated.
84?
Yeah, I think that's very underrated.
I think I have him in the top 10.
He's had 80 or more catches every season of his career.
Are these PPR rankings?
Yeah, PPR. I think it's very disrespectful, too.
I don't know how you can look at the last couple of years and think he's going to be the... Well,
oh, absolutely.
Whatever, man.
Number 28, we have T.Y. Hilton. I put this in the notes. I do not like T.Y. Hilton. Not personally, of course, but relatively.
He's very good when he plays.
When he does have some high potential, if healthy, with Phillip Rivers. But he's also coming off a very disappointing 2019 season. He had 850 yards or more in his first 7 seasons, which is fantastic. But I looked it up. He's number 3 in injury probability, which is not good.
And how was that calculated just for...
It's based off of injuries, the severity of them, how often they occur, if they have recurred, and so on. But injuries just in the past 2 seasons that were reported, we had a calf tear, a quad strain, a pec strain, a hamstring strain, and the same quad strain on the same quad.
Yeah, he's always...
With 13 injury reports in the past 2 seasons.
Yeah, that's not great.
Quite the fact. Number 27.
Not a very fun one, but
no, absolutely not.
It's a fact.
Number 27, we have Tyler Boyd. He's coming off back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He had 90 catches last season, too, which is very nice, especially for PPR leagues. He was he was another guy who kind of lacked in efficiency, however. He's number 7 in targets last year. However, he was only number 22 in yards and number 37 in touchdowns.
Oh.
So I feel like a lot of his numbers were coming from force-feeding him. Since he was also, you might not know this, number 5 in passing attempts last year.
I did not know that.
No, this is simply because they were so bad. I mean, they're probably going to be a little better this year, but I don't think they'll be good enough where they'll be up by so much where they bleed the clock with the run. So that being said, I could still see him getting force-fed this year, and maybe the return of A.J. Green could hamper him, which is why I don't have him higher, because back-to-back seasons with 1,000 yards, and he had 1,000 yards this season with 90 catches. I mean, that's nice stuff.
Yeah, there are a couple offenses that are just super hard to project.
Yeah, there are.
And I think that's one of them.
Number 26, we have Michael Gallup. Now, I was a little disrespectful early to Michael Gallup. He was kind of like Tyler Boyd in the sense where he got the ball so much that his numbers looked really nice. But because on a per-game basis, his numbers were better than Amari Cooper. That being said, I don't have as much faith in him. He was number 1 in drops. He is not a red zone threat at all. He ranked number 60 in red zone catches. It's not good. He did have a very underrated season.
He's got a lot of long balls.
Yeah, he does.
I think is where he does most of his damage.
Yeah, he's one of those guys where he could either be a guy who could bust, or not bust, would be a big disappointment, or he could really, really help you out. Because like last season especially, he had the same production, essentially, of Amari Cooper. And he probably got picked like 6 or 7 rounds after Amari Cooper. So like, and Amari Cooper didn't bust. So it's one of those things where like, he could be a steal, but at the same time, I'm not so sure. And my final one for this round, and that is Julian Edelman. And I know he's old, and I know he's got Cam Newton. But if we look at the stats, Brady ranks middle of the pack or poorly in nearly all the major stats except for yards, touchdowns, and attempts. And those are because high attempt usage. He was very, very, very below average in the efficiency stats. If we look at Tom Brady, number 30 in true completion, number 26 in play action completion, number 27 in red zone completion, number 29 in pressured completion, and number 32 in clean completion. So all these seem to be that Brady really wasn't that great last year, especially for a guy who threw the ball no further than 10 yards.
Yeah, his depth of target's gone down quite a bit.
No, and it's just, basically Cam's just got to show up and not suck. And I think that offense will run just fine.
And I have him ranked ahead of where you do, but it does make you nervous that Bill Belichick keeps talking about like a little bit of a quarterback committee kind of thing.
What does that even mean?
Well, he's got Brian Hoyer, and he hasn't ruled out the option of nobody else playing.
Fair.
You know, certain snaps. And I know they had that one rookie or whatever from last year.
Either way, though, like, I bet any of those guys could, probably not any of them, but I bet they could at least put up comparable stats to Brady last year. It's maybe not comparable, but like same relative ballpark.
Brian Hoyer's about as old as he.
Yeah, fair. And yeah, that was my final one. If we look at what Edelman, I guess we all looked at I brought to light what Tom Brady was not. However, if we look at what Edelman was, he was 100 receptions last year, 1,100 yards, 15 red zone receptions, and 6 touchdowns. They used him a lot in the red zone, and I expect that to continue. Although it didn't translate to many touchdowns, it certainly is more positive that they're at least trying to get him the ball in there, even if it didn't really reflect. But yeah, he's my number 25.
Great. And so I will just start with my number 30, because I forgot it, but we mentioned it again, was Brandon Cooks. Don't have much more to say about him. Number 29 is Robert Woods. He has had a couple surprisingly really good seasons the last couple years on the Rams, and I have no reason to think that they're not going to keep going to him.
Do his touchdown numbers worry you? I believe he had 2 or 3 last year.
I don't see him as being a guy that's going to ever be like a 10 touchdown guy, but I think that number can go up. The Rams offense was not running on full cylinder last year.
Can't really go down.
Well, I know, but I could see him having like 6 or 7 or something, maybe even 8. But you just don't project him to have 10 like a lot of you guys. That's probably why he's number 29 and not number 19 or 9. You know what I mean?
I really don't like him, and I have him way higher than you. So
he gets a lot of yards and a lot of catches, so he's a very safe floor, not as high of an upside kind of guy.
That's my notes here, very safe pick.
Yeah, he'll have weeks where he'll have a week or two where he gets you high points, but for the most part, it's going to be pretty simple with the
5 catches, 60 yards, and a 1 in 5 chance at a touchdown.
yeah. So
Essentially
I
what
think
it
his
is.
touchdowns are going to go up because I think the Rams' offense is going to be a lot better. But that's kind of how I see things on that end. I have Terry McLaurin actually at my 28. He looked very good last year. There's no way he can. I think he has to be better this year, given that he's not going to be a rookie any longer. And I think the offense would hopefully have more of an identity. I hope the quarterback situation is at least kind of figured out a little bit, and I think
Hopefully more than that. It was a disaster.
yeah, the Redskins are excuse me, the Washington football
The
team.
Washington football team.
It's a hard team to another one of those difficult teams, but I think he's going to put together a nice year, and I mean, granted he doesn't have a lot of competition, but I think it's going to be a solid year for him, and he's going to build on what he did last year.
I'm very excited about him as well.
He had a lot of he's kind of one of those ceiling guys.
Mm-hmm.
He has a pretty high ceiling. There were a couple of weeks I think he had 1 or 2 catches, and he kind of disappointed. But overall, I think he's definitely a nice addition. He's one of those guys that probably just because of that whole situation, and you didn't hear of him before, week 2 of last year. I don't know if you'd want him to be your 1 necessarily, but I think he's going to be a pretty safe play.
I have a lot more faith in him than DJ Chark, but that's just me.
Oh, well, that's a little bit of a hot take, but that's okay. Number 27 is T.Y. Hilton for me. Again, I try to project these guys a full season. There's, as mentioned before, there's not a chance in my mind that this guy plays over probably 11 games. And so I'm just a little worried about that. His bread and butter has been the downfield long ball as well over the years. I don't know how much Phillip Rivers can do that anymore. Phillip Rivers has now officially taken over my least favorite throwing motion. Big Ben is kind of going in that same direction, but I don't know if Phillip Rivers could even throw that deep anymore. So I think he's gonna. If he was healthy all year, I think he'd have a great year. I just think he's not a guy that I would want to be my 1 or probably 2, just because I think he's always going to be hurt. We just need to make an all-injury team, and we'll put him, AJ Green, and Will Fuller, and it's just guys that you're nervous about. And so I think
I'm not even nervous about him because I know what's going to happen.
At 27, you've kind of baked in a little bit of that because it's 27, so that's probably at least a 4th round or 5th round pick. But I think he's going to finish real nice there. This is going to be a little bit of a hot take for a lot of people.
Ooh.
I actually have Odell Beckham Jr. at 26.
I like that.
So that's a little bit of a spicy one. I just don't really trust his ability to post up numbers like he was on the Giants.
No.
I think the Browns' offense is going to be better, but he also has real competition with Jarvis Landry. And I don't think Austin Hooper is going to be stealing a ton of work, but they have real weapons. The running backs Kareem Hunt takes a huge chunk of the passing yards, and I just don't know if there's going to be really enough to get him to. I believe on the Giants he was hitting 1,300 yards and
like
double-digit touchdowns every season, and I just don't.
Mm-mm.
I think he's still very good, and I think if on a different situation he still could probably do it. I just think in the situation where they're at, coming off the year that they had the last couple, it's just safe to kind of put him middle of the road here. And again, I'm just looking at my list. If I were to give him, for example, 15 more points, he'd be around my number 13. So it's not like it's separated very much. I think he's very close to the top tier. I just don't think he's a top tier guy this year, unfortunately, as I have him in Dynasty.
It is difficult also to put up productive numbers of David Njoku on the team.
Yeah. The Browns are really tough. I know we talked about a couple teams being hard to predict, and I think the Browns fall in line as one of those like top 5 teams that are just like kind of just shrug. Like, what do you even do?
His fantasy production has been on the downward trend since his rookie season as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's gone down every single year except for 1.
I should say that the Browns are confusing in terms of like Odell Beckham. I think they have a lot of safe guys, but like Baker Mayfield's kind of a question mark. I think Chubb and Jarvis are pretty safe, but I think it's the Austin Hooper. Who knows what he's going to do?
It's also one of those strange teams where it seems like it's built to pass, but last year most of its identity was in the run.
Yeah,
they have all the passing weapons. It just doesn't work, or at least didn't work. And yeah, I don't see it getting better.
I do think they're going to bounce back, but I just don't know.
Their offensive line doesn't.
I just don't think the Browns' offense is going to have 2, 1,300-yard guys with over 8 touchdowns or whatever. So it's a little tough. My number 25 is going to be DJ Moore. I would be a lot higher.
Ooh.
I would be a lot higher on these guys if it wasn't for the quarterback situation.
Yeah, I don't like that at all. Not your pick. I
Yeah,
I
don't.
I don't want anybody who Teddy's throwing
I
to.
have no trust for Bridgewater, but he has shown he can kind of lock onto a guy and still get pretty good yards out of him. I don't think he's ever going to go deep, but he's going to pepper a lot of the mid-range stuff, and I think that's something that DJ Moore can kind of take advantage of. And I think he's really going to build on the year he had last year. And like I said, this is the wide receiving on this team is hard to project just based on Teddy Bridgewater being awful.
Yeah.
I know there's going to be a certain segment of the internet which would want to fight me over that, but I just think Teddy Bridgewater is not very good. They're going to rely heavily on the run game, and I just think that unfortunately it's a situation that they're just not really built to pass, which kind of sucks because if you put Aaron Rodgers on that team, that offense is probably just any good quarterback on that team, it's probably throwing it for 1,000,000 passing yards. But,
Fun fact: they actually ranked number 2 in pass attempts last season, which is interesting.
Which is
But I don't
still
think
pretty
they'll do.
wild.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna do that this year. But another interesting thing: the only reason I wanted DJ Moore low too, I have him higher or better, and it's because his yard after catch was pretty good last year.
Mm-hmm.
So that being
He's
said,
a really good player.
he's gonna get. I assume he's gonna get a lot of short passes. So he'll get. If he gets quantity, then his yard after catch will at least boost him a little bit. But yeah, I don't.
No, that makes sense.
I don't want him. I don't want Robbie Anderson. Especially don't want Robbie Anderson.
McCaffrey can help in a little bit of the ways Kamara was helping Teddy last year, where when you have to kind of focus in on the running back, it allows you can kind of have a little bit more movement in the secondary there.
It seemed like they tried to gear that offense to be what the Saints was last year with Bridgewater. Like, all right, we have the elite pass catching back. We have the deep threat. We have our guy who gets 1,000 catches. And except for they don't have the defense, so I don't really see what they're trying to do there because the defense is far worse than the Saints.
Yeah, it's just
it seems like a fool's errand, but
that's more of a football thing than a
Yeah.
fantasy thing. So I think that if that makes any sense, but
yeah,
I just think, and like I said, if it was any other quarterback, I'd probably have him ranked way up. But I think he does have upside, but I think we kind of have to cap his ceiling due to Teddy. And that's going to wrap up my number 25 there for what it's worth.
Oh, well, it looks like we have one additional comment or concern. And this one does not truly revolve around wide receivers. However, it was revolving a player we both spoke on in Great Lanes last episode. This is the comment that I saw, and I want to see if you think there's any merit in it. This guy, he titled the post, Kenyon Drake will be the fantasy bust of the year. I get it. He won a lot of leagues last year. But he was a late round draft pick. Many owners, I need to scroll to the side. Many owners cut him during his time in Miami. But early second round pick, Chase Edmonds was very good last year before he got hurt which opened the door for Drake. I see this as a Devonta Freeman pickup from last year. Everybody assumed he'd put up RB1/2 numbers, but ended up burning owners. I'm getting the same vibe from Drake.
I mean, I don't think anybody's really arguing. I mean, is this guy really arguing that Chase Edmonds is better? Is that his contention?
That's part of it.
I don't think Chase Edmonds is good enough to steal work from Kenyon Drake in terms of like steal work. I mean, obviously he's going to play, but I don't think you're like, better get Kenyon out or take him off the field for Chase. It's not like you got Nick Chubb back there.
I agree.
Even Kareem Hunt doesn't take Nick Chubb out hardly.
Like there's some players like I could see an argument for someone say Nick Chubb is going to bust or disappoint. With guys like Kareem Hunt there, it essentially eliminates his receiving game. I could kind of see it. But Chase Edmonds is no threat. Like, Chase Edmonds
and that's not saying he's bad. He's
not good.
Do what every second running back does and get a couple hundred yards, maybe score a couple touchdowns. It's not like he's going to go off for 700 yards.
Even if somebody were like Mark Ingram, because last season Gus Edwards had 700 rushing yards, and now they have J.K. Dobbins. I'd at least understand where they're coming from. This one, I don't see where they're coming from. He fears that he'll be the Devonta Freeman of last year and end up burning everybody.
Well, Devonta Freeman's also not as good,
and he's also always hurt and older.
I mean, couldn't you say that David Johnson was healthy at the end of the year, wasn't he? Like, why wasn't David Johnson
healthy?
Why wasn't he? I mean, I'm just saying though. I know that Chase Edmonds is hurt, so why isn't David Johnson taking? Why is he still productive?
Yeah,
Kenyon Drake with David Johnson there.
Like I said last episode, Kenyon Drake made me realize how lackluster David Johnson was last year.
Yeah, I don't know. I truly don't know.
Because I was always like, oh, yeah, well, bad offense, bad offensive line. Oh, he's probably hurt. Yep, it's one of the worst offensive lines in the league. Of course he's going to suck. And then Kenyon Drake showed up and absolutely killed it. So at that point, I'm like, okay, well, David Johnson's just sucking.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any
So
relevance for that.
I don't agree with that argument either.
I mean, if you don't like Kenyon Drake, I don't know.
Who do you like?
It's kind of weird to hit on a guy who's.
And yeah, he's saying even but an early second round pick. Like, you serious? It's like early second round pick. What's that? Pick 15? Like, it's not like he's being picked like top 5. I don't know.
I think I had him ranked top 5 either way. So.
Well, yeah, but I can see people being upset about a top 5. But like pick 15. I mean, if he could technically be. Actually, no. There's no way pick 15 he could be an RB2. Actually, yeah, if the person drafts super late in the first round. But you know what I mean. So yeah, that concludes the fan mail. And just as a heads up, those were not submitted to us. We had to find those ourselves. So that being said, if you're listening to this or watching it, first off, give it a like. But second, please send in any comments, questions, concerns regarding fantasy football, the show, or just about us. And we would love to answer them on the show. But with that great segue, we now go back to our next and final 5 of the day.
Yep, so we are going to now be going through our 20 through 24. Set it backwards.
I know.
Running backs 20 through 24, or wide receivers, excuse me. Brandon, would you like to start us out?
Number 24 is a guy I haven't liked in the past, but he's grown on me.
Oh.
Just a little bit. And that's Tyler Lockett. Prior to this, I believe he had... I'm trying to do the math in my head. He had either 47 or 57. He had 57 receptions was his career high.
Always been very disrespectful to Tyler Lockett.
Well, it was the thing. He'd have 50 catches, and then he'd have like 1,000 yards. So it's like you don't trust it. You don't trust it. But this last season, he had 82 receptions, and strangely enough, had about the same yards. So he boosted himself for PPR, and you trust him more. Because I'd rather have a guy who has 100 catches, even in non-PPR. A guy who has 100 catches for 1,000 yards than a guy who has 10.
So he changed your mind a little bit last year.
Just a little bit. His increased, he had a way bigger role, even though his production didn't go super far up. He increased his targets by 40 and his receptions by 25, and which shows when they give him the ball a lot, he stays around the 1,100 mark, and when they don't, he's still stuck around the 1,100 yard mark. So he's a pretty relatively. I think I said a low floor. Is that right? No, he's a relatively high floor.
You'd want him to have a...
Yeah, he's relatively high floor. I miswrote that, or mistyped it. Number 23, we have Bills great, Stephon Diggs. If we look at how it worked last year, Minnesota actually ranked 31st in passing attempts out of 32 qualifying teams.
Oh.
The Bills, while also viewed as a running team, ranked number 23. So they were quite a bit better. And as you said earlier, if John Brown can find success, I'm sure Stephon Diggs could as well. I expect him to see some more targets, roughly around the same amount of receptions, maybe a few less, but just as many, if not more, yards, because Josh Allen does like to throw the ball long, whereas Kirk Cousins was the exact opposite. Number 22.
I will say, just lastly on Stephon Diggs, he can be frustrating week to week, because he's Mr. Oh, I'm going to have 3 receptions for 150 yards, and then the next week it's 1 for 20. You know? And it's kind of really disappointing because, and I know this hasn't been his whole career, but I know a lot last year he was either really boom or bust.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, hey, he got me 20 points this week. Oh, and now he got me 3. Kind of one of those things, but a lot of upside there.
Let's see. Number 22. Oh, and one interesting fact, he's listed at 6 foot. However, the people at camp thought that he looked at least 6'3" to 6'4". Fun fact.
Gee.
Maybe it was just the helmet and the cleats, but we'll see.
Yeah, he's never been measured professionally before.
Apparently not. Number 22, we have Jarvis Landry. He outplayed OBJ last year from a fantasy perspective and just a production perspective. 81 or more catches every season as a pro, which keeps his floor very, very high. 81 catches, that's 5 points per game. And that's the least he's had in his career. Mm-hmm. So that 5 points a game just on catches, on his least amount of catches. So he has a high floor for that. As a pro, I'm sorry, I put as a pro. I rephrased it. On the Browns, he's averaging 82 catches, 1,000 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So he's like the ultimate RB2/flex option. Mm-hmm. I think he's very safe, and he hasn't been hurt much. So I like Jarvis Landry. Number 21 is a guy I don't really like.
Uh-oh.
However, I think his role will be increased, which might help him out a little bit. And that is Robert Woods. He's a relatively safe pick, as we said earlier, but I'm not too high on him. He was the number 8 in targets, and he was the number 8 in receptions. But with all those receptions and with all those targets,
Comes
number
great responsibility.
14 in, yes, thank you, number 14 in yards, and number 59 in touchdowns. How could the guy who has the 8th most catches have the 59th most touchdowns? It's the opposite of Hollywood Brown. We do have an interesting fact, though.
I've actually had another one?
I've had a few of them.
A
few nuggets. Another one. And this is a very interesting fact. He had 574, which ranks 33, in air yards. But he had 560 yards after catch, which is about 50% of his production. Which I don't even know what that means. Or I know what it means, but I don't know what that means for him. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I'm not sure. But I don't see people with about a 50-50 split, which is, I guess, could explain why he doesn't get many touchdowns and he doesn't get much red zone work.
It could be how they use him, too.
Yeah, it's a very bizarre stat.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are like 3-1, where he's 1-1.
He's always been a little bit of a bizarre player, though.
Yeah, he really has.
He's always slept on and everything else.
I don't know if he is, though. Because I guess he's always
Name one person who will say Robert Woods when you ask who a good receiver is.
But, I mean, relatively, compared to his contemporaries, if I were to think of good receivers, I wouldn't think of Robert Woods.
Exactly. But
well, I mean, like, he's fine.
I bet you most people don't think he's ever had 1,000 yards.
Oh, well, they need to watch our show.
Listening works as well.
Yeah, or listening. But we have Keenan Allen at number 20.
Ooh.
This might be viewed as disrespectful because Keenan Allen was actually very good last year, and he played much, much better than I thought he
I
did.
think he's had 3 consecutive years of 1,000 yards minimum.
Which is good for him because he used to be known for the injury bug, but now...
Oh, come on.
He was known for that.
We're not like... There's a difference between hurting your hamstring every week and,
Oh, yeah, what about that lacerated kidney?
and hurting your spleen. I mean, there's a... Then he break his collarbone.
Wait, it was like the thing with...
It was the weird...
It was like the thing with Devonta Adams. It was always something. It was like, oh, this is going to be his year. Oh, well, he lacerated a kidney. Shoot.
Jason Witten.
Fine. But I'm praising him. He was number 2 in receptions, which I was not aware of. He was number 5 in yards, number 6 in red zone catches, and he was also number 9 in yards after catch. The big question is, I guess, injury concerns, but I don't really view that as much of a concern, but it's just something to keep in mind. But also the quarterback questions. This is what has me having him ranked so low. We have not seen him play a single snap yet, and upon draft, I heard many people were upset with that pick. So, and with Phillip Rivers gone, he's a guy who could put up phenomenal numbers, or he could...
You don't like Tyrod or Justin Herbert?
No.
Okay.
Bill's great, Tyrod. I love him, but...
Do you?
Not literally, but figuratively.
Yeah, but do you?
He's the last Bills quarterback to make a Pro Bowl.
Yeah, but that's like the Alex Smith Pro Bowls of old.
Actually, I'm pretty sure Josh Allen made it because somebody backed out.
Oh, the first 50 guys backed out. And didn't Teddy Bridgewater make a Pro Bowl?
Yeah, he did.
It's the classic...
No, Josh Allen.
It's the classic 300 guys opted out. We have 2 quarterbacks left to call.
I'm looking at Josh Allen on the Jags. No, never mind. Oh,
jeez.
Because I thought he made it, but
There's
apparently...
2 Josh Allens.
I know.
Okay.
But, no, I remember Vince Young made the Pro Bowl. I think he had 1,500 yards and like 8 touchdowns. The next year, Matthew Stafford missed it, throwing for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. It was like...
Yeah, that's
why I hate when people bring up the argument like, oh,
that's a little tough.
They bring up like Pro Bowls or All-Star games. Like, nobody cares.
That's why they do rings. Remember, Bill Russell.
The greatest, of course. How could I forget? He reminds us every time he speaks, and I hate it. But yes, speaking of that, I've concluded with my top 20 of the day.
All right. So I will go ahead and jump into mine. So my number 24, this is one that really pained me. It pained me to put him here. I actually have Mike Evans at number 24. Again, not much separates him from, being 12 spots closer. But I have him at number 24. I am very worried about the Bucs offense. I don't mean very worried as in like I'm scared they're not going to do anything. It's just him and Godwin put up so many yards. last year. It's just so hard to think that it's going to be repeatable with no Jameis and without being down all the time. And I just think the offensive numbers are going to be down across the board.
I have him quite a bit lower. However, I have him marked as somebody I have no faith in.
No faith in.
Or I lack faith in. It's the thing, like, he could put up top 5 numbers or he could put up number 20.
I mean, he does like every year, but
that's the only reason I put him up there. Everyone acts like Brady is a godsend for their fantasy production, and he might be a hindrance. He won't sling the ball.
In terms of fantasy, not in terms of NFL.
Like, sure, he won't turn the ball over as much, but at the same time...
as much, like 40 times as...
I mean, granted, yeah, like, he could wear a blindfold and still throw less turnovers, but...
I think
Godwin's going to benefit a lot from this.
Mike Evans is very good, but I think he's a little bit of a product of Jameis having to... Like, his stats are. I think Mike Evans is a great player. I'm not dissing Mike Evans, the player. I just think his stats are kind of Jameis.
And who's the last big receiver who had success with Tom Brady?
Kenny Galladay. Oh, Randy Moss.
Exactly. Was that like a decade ago?
Well, that was the last big one he had.
Still, it seems like
when you have a bunch of short white guys, it's hard to get I guess N'Keal Harry doesn't count. I'm not counting.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry didn't do much, but it seems like he's always going for the slot guy and the small guy who gets a lot of separation, a couple of yards downfield.
Can I call Gronk? Can I say he fits that?
No.
He's big. You can't say he's the last big receiver.
He's not a receiver. Well, all tight ends are big.
Is he not a ball catcher? Wouldn't he therefore be a receiver?
I mean, we don't sit down and say, oh, well, he had James White.
But Gronk,
wide receiver James White out there.
Gronk is different than a normal tight end.
Was.
Well, yeah. I still think he's going to be okay this year, but that's for next week.
For those 4 games he plays.
So moving on from Mike Evans, 23, I actually have Jamison Crowder. He put up some really nice stats last year, and I don't see any reason why he can't keep that up. I don't think they've done anything on the offensive end with Jalen Reagor or even Rashad Perriman to necessarily knock him off of his yardage. I believe he put up over 800 yards receiving last year with Sam Darnold only playing, I think it was 13 games or 12 games.
He missed a few games too, didn't he?
It was, I just think that he, again, this is not a Mr. High Floor kind of guy, but he has a pretty high ceiling where I think he's going to be very consistent with the production that he offers. And so I'm a big fan of Jamison Crowder there, and I think that he can, again, I don't think he's an elite player, so his ceiling is capped, but I think he can reenact or even do a little better than he did last year, just given the general lack of targets that are on the Jets.
And yeah, Robbie Anderson's gone too, which I know he's not anything great, but he's still somebody who took a lot of targets.
No, exactly. So I think he's going to be another safe bet. Number 22, I actually have Devontae Parker. Include the Dolphins in their aforementioned list of teams that we don't really know what the heck they're going to be doing on offense.
Parker was very underrated last year.
He put together a very nice season, and I think, isn't Fitzpatrick still slated to start technically? I know it's...
Technically.
I think either way, even if you're a rookie, though, if Tua gets out there, I mean, you're going to go to the guy.
Wait, he was number 5 in yards and 4 in touchdowns. So arguably by the numbers, he's a top 5 guy.
And I know that he had a little bit
of
a breakout because before last year he wasn't all that good. But, I mean, I got him off the free agency wire last year. That's how much people didn't care about him.
That's a great pickup.
It was. It was kind of a bummer for our entire league because my team was the worst team in the league and I had...
Just going to waste.
It was like a top 5 receiver on it. Yeah, so I think he's going to be another nice play. And honestly, he's one of those ones that if you're risk averse, you might want to be a little careful. But I think at wide receiver 22, that's still some very good value.
Does the Dolphins ranking number 4 in pass attempts worry you at all?
I think their offense was just so. I don't even know what to say. It was.
Their lead rusher was Fitzpatrick. So
I know
they had to throw the ball.
I don't know. I think. Again, he's ranked 22 for these reasons. I think it's kind of
I have him ranked higher.
There's a lot of upside built there. I wouldn't be overly.
He was so underrated
about him.
He was so underrated.
I'd be nervous with him at like 10, not at so much at 22.
Like even he put up essentially the same numbers as Allen Robinson. And I was hearing a lot of people talking about like the resurgence of Allen Robinson. Oh, he's back. This, that, and the other thing. But nobody really cared about Devontae. Maybe because they sucked. But I mean, so the Bears.
I would say more so because Allen Robinson has shown he's very good.
Yeah.
Where Devontae Parker has, up to this point, been kind of considered a bust.
Fair.
That's probably... I think, and even myself, I'm a little hesitant with him because I remember the bad years. So, there's a PC that says, well, I mean, he did it for, 12 games. Why would you think that's his... He's now that guy.
And he's also in the Dolphins, so it isn't a very marketable franchise either, so they might not have been pushing it. Like
No.
guys like OBJ, he outperformed OBJ, but you still saw OBJ a lot more than him, just because he's just more marketable.
I'll move on to my 21, and that's going to be DK Metcalf. Excuse me.
Ooh.
I know. I'm expecting him to build a lot on last year. I know that typically you'd want to ignore most of the stuff that comes out of the training camps and the interviews, but Russell Wilson has really talked him up, and they've kind of talked about the rapport that they've built. And just after last year, how good it looked for a guy that, if you remember the pre-draft reports, everybody thought he couldn't catch and he couldn't run routes. Remember that cone drill or something?
He looked very strong, though.
Yeah, he did look very strong. Him and Shaquille or that one guy on Oregon. I don't remember.
Oh, I can't
almost
remember
said Okafor.
I know you almost said Jaleel Okafor. I'm like, man, that guy.
His name's close to that. I don't know
He looks
why
like he
I
hasn't
said
seen the
that.
gym in 5 years.
Yeah, different body, that's for sure. Was it Sean Okerman or
That might be it.
something like that? I don't know. But yeah, I think DK is going to build on where he was last year, and I think he's really going to push Lockett a little bit in terms of who has the most yards. I think Lockett is going to overpower him, but I still think he's going to be right up there. And he's obviously proven with a very good rookie year that he can be a guy, that you can kind of trust every week. And I wish he was on my dynasty team. Number 20, my final guy is going to be Calvin Ridley. I know people might have him higher than this. I know that as Julio gets older and becomes, he's always going to be the focal point of the offense, but less of a focal point of the offense. I think every year Calvin Ridley is slowly going to keep, bridging the distance until eventually he kind of overtakes him. And I don't think he's going to overtake him this year, but I think he's within a couple years, and he keeps making positive steps. And so I see Atlanta bouncing back a little bit. They played so poorly at the beginning of last year, and I just think that they're going to take a very bigger step forward this year with the addition of Gurley. And, I know they lost Cooper, but I believe they got Hayden Hurst instead. And so and he's proven that he's pretty good. And so I think that their offense is going to click. And I think that, like I mentioned, Ridley is going to keep soaking up targets that Julio might get. Not in any huge way, but I think his overall yards are going to keep going up. And that's going to actually do it for me. That was my number 21. Or do I always forget how this works. Do I go one more?
End at 21.
Okay, end at 21. It's so confusing.
So yeah, I'm excited about Calvin Ridley too, though. A lot of places I saw he followed up an 820 yard season with an 866. He didn't make that leap, but he also played 3 less games.
Well, Julio was hurt for a lot of last year
Yeah.
too, which you could look at that 2 ways. That he got better attention, he got better corners, or
But yeah, everyone's like, the box score numbers are essentially the same, therefore he didn't make that leap. But with 3 less games, I mean, that's still a significant improvement.
No, exactly. He's a little better than Riley. So
Just a little.
So that is going to wrap up our wide receiver rankings of 20 through 40, or 21 through 40, excuse me. Very quickly here, we are going to be doing one last segment, and that is going to be are we doing the
high upside?
Our high upside segment. And these are guys, at least how I've done it, Brandon, you can explain if you've done it a little differently. These are all guys outside of my top 40 that I've selected and said, hey, this guy's has a very good chance to finish within the top 40, or even, better than 40. Obviously better than 40. So
I kept one guy from my top 40, but he was in the back.
Okay. We'll just go ahead and do every other if that's okay.
So my number 1, this might be a homer pick, but I picked John Brown. His average draft position is 156, which is almost undrafted. And I think that's a little disrespectful for a guy who put up over 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns.
He's really ranked that badly?
Yeah, he's ranked very poorly. And he's still a good deep ball threat. And yeah, they have better receiving options this year. But at the same time, there have been injury concerns with Diggs in the past. So I feel like John Brown, for where he's being drafted, you're losing literally nothing.
Can I, and just to make sure, you're comparing this to ADP?
Yeah, ADP was at 156.
Okay, I just want to clarify that my rankings are going to be, my list is based off where they're ranked in my rankings.
Okay.
Since we're not using the same metric, it's going to be helpful to note that.
But he's borderline undrafted, which I think for him is pretty disrespectful.
Well, yeah,
all
it
things
seems
considered.
like he should be a little higher up the board.
Because that's the best season of his career, and he's being drafted his entire career. So he puts up 3 or 4 lackluster years and still gets drafted. Puts up a good one, not we shouldn't draft him anymore. It doesn't make much sense.
So I have 3 players, and I'm going to start with the first one, and that's going to be Hollywood Brown. I actually think that he's going to do a lot better than he did last season, even, and I think he's going to be the clear-cut number one guy in that backfield. Obviously, at the wide receiver.
Yeah.
Obviously, Mark Andrews is slowing down the tight end and probably going to have more yards. But I think he's going to, as we mentioned a little bit earlier with the Julio situation, I think he's going to bridge the gap a little bit, and I think he's only going to get better. So I'm expecting him to have a better year this year and potentially be a guy that surprises a lot of people.
Oh, let's see. My next one. I know you won't like this. It's AJ Green.
Oh.
Again, as we stated earlier today, he's one of those guys where, for where he's getting picked, which is ADP 65, so a sixth round pick, he has potential to be a top 2 or 3 round pick. I don't see it, but at the same time, there's that, like, he has a high risk, high reward where you could be getting one of the better receivers in the league in the 6th round, or you could get a guy who gets hurt. So if you're weak at the receiver position and want to maybe make a push or make a pick that could push your team over the edge, one way or another, pick AJ Green.
Yeah, he does have that ability either way, doesn't he?
Yeah, like if he misses or if he's a dud, you wasted a 6th round pick, which is never good. But if he hits, it's a nice 6th round pick.
My next one is going to be a guy that a lot of people liked last year who didn't pan out, and that's going to be N'Keal Harry. I think he's going to have a major bounce back year, especially with Cam and being able to move the ball more downfield. I think that he's going to have what last year should have been this year. I could see him as not eclipsing Edelman quite yet, but him very much kind of pushing Edelman to being the best receiver on the team this year. And so I'm expecting a big year out of him. I think so. I know this is a little bit cheap because he's number 42 in my ranks. But I would not be surprised at all if he found his way in the top 30-ish, top 25. So he's somebody that I'm really excited about and somebody that I'd love to snag at the end of, or I don't know where he's going, but
the ball's got to go somewhere
at a value point in the draft.
And my final one is a guy like N'Keal Harry, who people were very excited about last year, and they didn't really pan out. This was especially with the injury to Tyreek Hill, and that is Mecole Hardman. The ADP of 108, which is essentially an 11th round pick. I like him a lot. I've read reports that his route running has gotten much, much, much better than last year. Granted, when you're comparing it to nothing, it makes it something. But at the same time, it still apparently was very, very a big improvement. And basically, I could see him becoming at least a viable option, especially for where he's being drafted. I don't trust Sammy Watkins much as the wide receiver too, especially with his health. And so, yeah, I say Mecole Hardman on that one.
Okay, great. And I will finish up with my last one here. And so my last one is actually going to be Brashad Perriman. He's of all these guys, he's the one I'm least excited about. But he just went to the Jets this year. Last year, he had 645 yards on the Bucs with 6 touchdowns, and that's kind of being the third guy on the team. So, you can argue all day that he had the worst coverage and this, that, and the other thing. But I think that he's shown, and I know he's been on a couple teams, but I feel that he's shown enough to say, hey, I think he's worth a shot, and I think that he can put up some good numbers for you this year, especially with the Jets losing Robbie Anderson and essentially just having Crowder there and the new rookie as well. So I think he's going to go ahead and put together a nice season. I don't expect him to go for 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns or anything like that, but I think he's going to be a nice, potentially get you 700-800 yards and 4 or 5 touchdowns. So it's kind of a nice end of your bench stash that, and I could be completely wrong. He could end up being quite a bit better than I think he is.
Fair enough.
Did you have any more, or is that going to wrap it up?
That will wrap it up.
Okay. Well, perfect. Once again, we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to this week's episode. This is episode 3 of our podcast. Next week, I believe it will be on Friday, we will be reviewing Brandon looking over into the frame. We will be reviewing wide receivers number 1 through 21. I will never get it right.
You're right, it's 1 through 20.
1 through I don't know. We're going to be reviewing 1 through 20 next week, or this Friday, excuse me. Brandon, where can the good people find us?
The good people can find us where they can always find us. And that is on finishedfirstmedia.com. Finishedfirstmedia.com. That's first spelled out. finishfirstmedia.com. This was the Suit Yourself podcast, which you could also find on Apple Podcasts, and you could also find it on Spotify. Do you have a Spotify, Austin?
Like the podcast one? Or
No, do you have a Spotify account?
I sure do.
Me too. It's free. So you can just use that free
I mean,
link.
if you like ads. Mine's not free.
Well, fine. All I'm saying is it's free to get. You're literally out nothing. So even if you don't like it.
But couldn't one argue that they would potentially be out time, which is the greatest currency that any of us have?
I mean, yeah. At the end of the day, that's a fair assessment. At the end of the day, when
Listen
you're in your
to
deathbed,
it while you're doing something.
yes, no matter
there's
how
no way
rich you
lose.
are, there's no way you can get time back. You can never buy or
It
bargain
sounds
anymore.
like you are arguing against listening to the podcast.
Well, just listen to it in the car, guys. Come on, listen to it in the car. Listen to it while you work.
Mowing the lawn.
Mowing the fresh cut grass, exactly.
You wouldn't mow fresh cut grass.
I mean, you could.
Why?
It wouldn't make much sense, but you could. But yeah, just do it whenever. Yeah, that's about it. You can find it on Spotify.
An excellent outro there.
No, I know. I was tripping over everything. But yeah, look us up on YouTube on Finish First Media, or you can find our podcast as well at Suit Yourself Pod. That's Suit Yourself Pod. And I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but a friend of ours is beginning a podcast in maybe a week or two on Finish First Media, and he has named it. Do you want to know what the name is?
Every week it's a week or two. That's never going to happen.
That's not the podcast name, though.
Okay. What is the podcast name?
It's the High Ceiling Podcast. It's going to focus on Dynasty, but also it's going to be a podcast with a very high ceiling. So that's all I have to say. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
Well, I just want everyone to guard their hearts this week. That's all I got to say.
Well said.
All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back Friday. Have a great evening, morning, or afternoon.